Shalom Aleichem, good evening. Welcome to class number 23 of 30 Letters in 30 Days. We want to give some shout outs to some meetings that have been going on all around the world. Last night there was a group of women who met in Toronto, Canada. And tonight there's a group in the capital of the Empire State, Albany. Did you know that? And in New York, it's like upstate. Muncie is called upstate New York. So like, what's Albany? I grew up in Chicago. They say just outside Chicago, there's a place called Illinois. New York, it's even noch mehr. Okay. And I believe also the last teen Verbringen. There have been a series of teen Verbringens. Some of the campus shluchos have been meeting and Verbringing on Zoom with teens. And I think tonight is their last gathering of 3 or 4 or possibly more. At any rate, it's just amazing the amount of excitement and participation that's been going on during the past few weeks. And in Mitzvah Hashem, it will all come together. What was someone saying here? I'm just getting this in. Baruch Hashem, we had a lively Verbringen after davening on Shabbos in the women's section at Anash of Ermont for the last few weeks, discussing the week's letters. More women are joining each week. Baruch Hashem, that's great. Okay, that just came in. That was hot off the presses. You know where Ermont is? That's upstate New York. Okay. Anyways, Baruch Hashem. Monday, a week from tonight, is Early Yud Aleph Nisan, is the big women's gathering, Verbringen, Siyum, at the Oil. We have secured a venue about a block away from the Rebbe's Oil. Space is limited, so please RSVP. Please RSVP at 30 letters, 30 days. Is it .com or .org? Going to remind me. 30 letters, 30. I'm putting it in my browser. .com. 30 letters, 30 days. .com. Without any further delay, let's look at tonight's letter. Baruch Hashem Tezvav Shvat, Tavshin Tezvav, Brooklyn Shalom Avracha. Tu B'Shvat, or Chamisha Asa B'Shvat, like the Rebbe always said. I don't think that I've ever said Tu B'Shvat. I think it's always Chamisha Asa B'Shvat. The tree holiday. Chag Li'ilanot, as they say. I think there's a song about it. Okay, but this is not about the trees, at least not overtly. B'mayna al michtovei v'aprisha shalom shekabalti al yidei b'noi shiyichye. In response to your letter and the regards conveyed by your son, may he be well. It seems that the Rebbe had, probably it was a Yechidus situation, a one-on-one meeting, where the Rebbe had already met with the son in this story and was now writing to the father of that son. And the letter is about the son. So the Rebbe is speaking about this son and some concerns that the father has about the son. Okay. Ubetach yimser lai teichen hasicha shalanu. So surely your son is going to tell you what we spoke about. B'chol zeh, la'aseh sitzeinei kefi shekaisev v'gam ma shamase bal peh, hineni bo gam be'ezeh shuris al kolponim b'kitzer kefi rishyein hazman v'hu. Nevertheless, even though your son's going to tell you what we spoke about, you should carry out his will conveyed in his writing, as well as what he transmits in speech. Or actually, that I was saying, you should carry out. Yeah. So basically, whatever your son tells you, believe him. Like, you can trust that he's going to convey to you properly the discussion that we had. But I'm also going to add a few lines very briefly as time permits. Okay. Echad man yonim de dereinu zeh by nikir ad kama godol cheshech hagolas hakafa mechupelhu. Wow. One of the aspects of the qualities of this generation by which you can recognize how dark and doubled and redoubled the darkness, the spiritual darkness is in our generation. This is a heavy thing that Rebbe is saying. There's something about our generation. It's a common thing, almost ubiquitous in our generation, and it's really a sign of the times just how serious the spiritual concealment is. And what is that thing? Asher lamre samavur bekame mekeme semehem bigeres hakedish labino zaken balatanya pesik beniste de teira vashochan orach pesa benigle de teira semenchav beis kuflama dalad. In spite of that which it says clearly in Tanya, which is written by the Alter Rebbe, who is the decisive codifier both in the legal realm and mystical realm of the Torah, and the Rebbe gives the specific source in Igeres HaKodesh, that's the 4th volume of the 5 volumes of Tanya, in the 22nd letter of Igeres HaKodesh. The Rebbe even gives the page number, Kuf Lamed Daled. So let me just... That's a mouthful. That's a long sentence. In spite of what the Alter Rebbe, who is the codifier in mysticism and in the legal realm, in spite of what he said very, very, very clearly in Igeres HaKodesh Siman Chav Beis, which is what? What did the Alter Rebbe say? Ein Adam Yedea B'ma Mistaker. Nobody knows how he's going to make a living. Now, that's not originally the Alter Rebbe's teaching. That's actually a Gemara in Psachim, Daf Nun Daled Amid Beis. But the Alter Rebbe brings that Maimer Chazal, that saying of our sages, and actually points out that there are several things that our sages say nobody knows. And one of them is nobody knows what is going to be the way he makes his money. He doesn't know which channel Hashem will choose to send him his parnasa. And another thing that nobody knows, this Gemara in Pesachim says, is when Mashiach will come, precisely the moment of Mashiach's coming. And in that letter, Siman Chav Beis of Igeres HaKodesh, the Alter Rebbe says, you can learn from the fact that both of these are things that nobody knows, that they're on par with each other, that just like nobody knows when Mashiach is coming, that's precisely the degree to which nobody knows how he's going to make his parnasa, or precisely what is going to be the means for making his parnasa. Okay, it's meaning to say it is that unknowable. All right, so the Rebbe describes, or this is a sort of a paraphrase of Igeres HaKodesh Siman Chav Beis. V'hushva yediyah zu lahedra yediyah malchus beis David mosei tachzer ayin sham. The Alter Rebbe compares the lack of knowledge of how you're going to make your living to the lack of knowledge of precisely when Mashiach will come. Go look over there. Okay. So we live in a very dark gullus because in our generation, in spite of the fact that the Alter Rebbe said clearly, based on the Gemara, we don't know how we're going to make our living. We don't know what channel Hashem's going to choose to send us our parnasa. We don't know. And nevertheless, what do you see? That it's such a relatively young age. Maschilim lechapes es tachlis hagashmi. The young people are looking for their tachlis hagashmi is very difficult to translate. You can literally translate it as a material ends or material goals. But what it really means is they're thinking what they would consider practically, but the Rebbe is saying is actually incredibly impractical, and it's just a distraction and a time and energy sucker and waster. And it totally distracts them from what is true happiness in life. As if they think they know the future. Really? You think you really know the future? And people go, and adults go, parents go, and they try to set up their child's education in such a way, or set up their own lives, in a particular way, that that's how Hashem is going to be able to support them. In other words, if I don't do these things to make sure I have a very specific specific plan of a very specific channel, how Hashem is going to be able to support me or even my children. If I don't do all those things, Hashem's not going to be able to support me. He won't be able to find ways to send me a parnasa. As if that were the only way, as if that were the only way that Hashem would be able to find a way to kindly and mercifully sustain and give sustenance. And it's just such a mishigas, the Rebbe says. Such a waste of time and energy. It's such a distraction from what we need to be focused on. And it is a sign of the times, an unfortunate sign of the times, just how common this is, how ubiquitous this is, that people are confusing and distracting and bothering children, relatively speaking, that they have to start thinking about how they're going to make a living when we know that that's unknowable. Nobody knows exactly precisely how they're going to make a living. By the way, just for fun, just for my own amusement, I looked it up. I wanted to see what percentage of college graduates use their degree and actually are employed in the field, in any field that is related to their major. So I found a study that was quoted in a report of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and written up in an article in the Washington Post. So over there it says that only 62% of college graduates actually get a job that requires a college education. Okay, so that's interesting. Almost half of college graduates end up not even using their degree at all. But what was actually, this was even a bigger number than I thought. 72% of college graduates end up being hired working in a field that is completely unrelated to their major. 72%. It's wild. So it just goes to show you that people really don't know what form the channel to receiving Hashem's sustenance is going to take. And so the Rebbe is saying that it's a real shame to bother children to start worrying about these things and to distract them and make this something that they should have to be conscious of. And in this case, as we're about to read, it's actually caused quite a bit of anxiety in this young man and is causing him psychological problems and perhaps even a psychosomatic or histrionic illness. But we'll see in a second. Okay. V'hine yedua tzivui akosov berazal v'erachacho Hashem alikecha b'chol asher taseh. Now, take, the Rebbe doesn't say the word take, but I'm saying take, yes, it's true. There is such a concept that Hashem will bless you in all that you do. In other words, you have to do. You have to make a vessel in order to receive the sustenance. Okay, that's true. You do have to work. You can't sit there and say that Hashem will just deliver parnasa to my doorstep. You have to do something. That's true. But you have to start preparing close to the time when it's actually happening. Now, what does it mean, close to the time it's actually happening? I don't know. The Rebbe is not giving a number here. It's not saying how many days or months that means, but clearly it doesn't mean that a young person who is still being supported by his parents, he should not yet be thinking about something that's not relevant yet. It's not part of his life right now, and he shouldn't be thinking about it. V'gam ozlei be'efen shetevalbel dvorim ho'yikorim when yonim shel pleni upleni, and even then, and even when it comes time that he should start thinking about it, Okay, let's say he gets married and he does a year or two in kollel, and now it's time to start thinking, how is he going to support a family? Okay, fine. But even then, when the time comes, don't do it in a way that's going to distract you from the things that are really important in life. Uletzari kechol advarim oelehu b'hanegea levnei sheyichyeh. It's very painful for me that all of this that I'm describing applies to your son. This is what's happening to your son. He's having anxiety about his future career and ability to make money. And it seems this has been going on for years. ונוגדי גזו בעמק נפשי הפעולה בפנימיוסי קיבוץ מפני גדול הדייגה אף שאינה משאר הנ"ל. Let me just turn the page. בעוונוסי והשגוסי איך שדייג על זה. He's starting to worry, and he's been worrying for some time, and it's bothering him deeply, the depths of his heart, and it's causing him inner anxiety. And the Rebbe says he may not even be aware himself. He may himself not understand how much it's bothering him. Hine mabet al umnus hashchita shalamit. He's looking at the skill of shchita, of Jewish kosher ritual slaughter that he's learning. As if that is the only way, that's the only thing that his entire future to make a living will depend upon. And this, I would translate this almost as subconscious thought. This thought that's sort of lurking in the back of his mind, that this shchita that he's learning is the only way he's going to be able to make a living. It's causing this lamentable condition. What is the lamentable condition? We're going to find out. He actually has, it sounds like hand cramps, where he's unable to hold a shchita knife. And the Rebbe suggests pretty clearly that it's brought on by the anxiety that the boy is feeling about needing to use the shchita as a means for a livelihood. V'kanal afsher shebahasog v'avon negluyim ein ze borer afilu be'enei atzmei shel b'nei sheyichya aval l'daiti zeh inyan zuhi asiba. Now it's possible that in his mind this is not clear. He doesn't even realize this is what's happening. But in my opinion, says the Rebbe, this is the clear cause of it. When I read this part of the letter, I thought it was very interesting. We had a letter earlier on, one of the first few letters that we learned actually, where the Rebbe was speaking about Limudei Chayil, about secular studies, and lamenting that children should be distracted from building their spiritual future by being taken away to study things that are only really, that the only reason they're studying it is because people feel that if they don't study it, Hashem's not going to be able to give them a way to support their family in the future. And if you read that, you can sort of conflate the two concepts. There are two concepts here. One is Limudei Chayil, and the other is Tachlis. Let me say this in English. One is secular studies, and the other is children worrying about employability. They're two separate concepts. They actually shouldn't be conflated. And here, this letter is the perfect illustration. Because here, there's no Limudei Chayil, there's no secular studies involved at all. What is the person learning? What is the boy learning? Shchita. Now, shchita is a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah from the Torah to provide kosher food and to perform kosher slaughter. So it's a good thing. It's a beautiful thing. It's a mitzvah to know how to shecht. It's a mitzvah to learn hilchas shchita. What the Rebbe is lamenting is that a young person is thinking way, way prematurely about how he's going to make a living. So it's very helpful to have this letter, because you could think that what was really bothering the Rebbe about this worrying about tachlis was that it made people learn secular studies. But here from this letter, it's very clear we can separate those two factors and we isolate one from the other. And you can see, no, being distracted with worrying about employability in the future for a young person is in and of itself, alone by itself, is already something lamentable. Even if it's not causing somebody to learn anything outside of Torah, as is the case here. The only thing he's learning, the only skill, the only thing he's learning is something that's a mitzvah to learn, something that's written about in Shulchan Aruch. It's Torah to learn it. And yet, because the person is learning in a way where in the back of his mind he thinks this is what he needs in order to make a living, the Rebbe is saying it's causing a lot of problems. Okay, so I think that's very, very helpful and very clarifying. Let's continue here. Moving she afsher besicha achas l'shanis kol hashkafase. Wow, this, when I read this line, I was like, we could have a whole class, a whole evening just on this. It's obvious that I can't change his entire hashkafa. I can't change his entire view with one conversation. Ubefrat shehi tmuna belibay omik b'meshech kama shonim ad she'eni margish ad kama zeu hefech memidas habitochen. Especially when he's had this thought so deeply and for so long that he doesn't even realize how this worldview that he has is antithetical to trust in Hashem. Ubizbonenus yeshara nikar umuchach shezeu gam kein hevich ho'amuna b'hashgacha protes asher kadosh baruch hu kol yachol ki pshita she'im hoya ba lahavana zu and in fact, this entire idea that he's harboring is against the belief that Hashem orchestrates and runs the world with divine providence. And if he were to realize how this idea, it's not a trivial matter. This idea flies in the face of the most basic faith in Hashem. If he were to realize that, he would immediately desist from it, because he has Yiras Shamayim. He is a God-fearing boy. So it's very interesting what the Rebbe is saying here. This boy is harboring thoughts. If he were to realize the true implications of these ideas and how they are absolutely antithetical to the belief in Hashem running the world, this boy would never, as a God-fearing boy, he would never believe in such things. And that's what's so insidious about it, is he let these beliefs settle into him in such a deep way, in such a subconscious way, that he doesn't even realize how spiritually unhealthy and wrong these ideas are. Okay, let's continue. Now, like the Rebbe just said, I cannot change his worldview in one conversation. So being that it is impossible to change his whole attitude, his whole belief, his whole worldview immediately, I told him that although I don't want to explain to him all of the above for various reasons, that he should do a few things. In other words, the Rebbe didn't want to get into it too deeply because it's not going to be productive. So the Rebbe was holding back certain things that he's now telling the father. I would have wanted to tell him, but it's just, unfortunately, he's at a point where these ideas are so deeply ingrained in him, it's not going to help to point it out to him to that extent. So here's what I told him. I told him to do a few things. I kept it very simple. Aleph, one thing. Lahaschil teikif ba'achonas derech acheres leparnasase. I told him, you know what? You want to worry about parnasa? Forget shchita. Forget it. It's not shchita anymore. Something else. Find something else. Prepare for a different career. Hainu shafilu besichlei yeh moker leimer she'efshalei lisparnas ba'efen zeh. I wanted that even his intellect, forget about the faith, because really, from a perspective of faith, he should already know that we have no way of knowing where our parnasa is going to come from. But I can't get him there yet. That's just a bridge too far at this point. What I can do is just on an intellectual level, his mind is made up that this is the only way, shchita is the only way for parnasa. So what I want to do is get his mind out of that. And you're going to see, as we read on in the letter, I alluded to it earlier, that he developed a hand cramp where he cannot perform shchita, where physically he became unable. And the Rebbe believes it's because of the anxiety. Okay? So the Rebbe says, I told him one thing. One thing is, forget about shchita. You're not going to make a living as a sheikhet. You find some other parnasa. Because mitzad amunah, he should already be comfortable with that. He should already know that you might study shchita and you'll make a living in a completely different way. But at this point, I can only do it on an intellectual level. So I'm telling him like this, at least intellectually understand. Well, the Rebbe didn't even tell him the reasoning behind it. The Rebbe just told him, start preparing for a different career. But the Rebbe is telling the father, the reason I told him to start preparing for a different career is because I want to liberate his mind from that thought process that shchita equals my only way of making a living. So I want him to abandon that. I want him to start thinking about other ways of making a living. Okay. ein asidai talui dafke beumnas hashchita. I wanted him to realize that his future is not based on his ability to shecht. V'chein sheyilmed b'yeshiva v'yedei kvar hilchos treifas v'hilchos shchita, and that he should learn in yeshiva and know the laws of treifas. That means animals, what makes them kosher and non-kosher, and the laws of shchita. Matoiv rabbonis. Oh, I'm sorry. Since he already knows hilchos shchita and treifus, so matoiv rabbonis, he should learn now the laws that are typically learned by rabbis. He learned the laws applicable to a sheikhet. Now he should learn the laws applicable to rabbis. And he should prepare for taking the tests for rabbinical ordination. In other words, I want to get his mind off of the shchita thing. Base. Im tachzar. Now here the Rebbe actually spells it out. If this lamentable condition returns of what? The chalishas hayad, a weakness of the hand. Lo yelochem neged zeh, he shouldn't fight it. Lizgaber ala chalishas dafke beregazu mamash, he shouldn't try to overcome the weakness at that moment. El shelo yitei leifazu kol cheshivas. He actually should just ignore it. He should say, it's nothing. He should shrug it off. He should not give it any credence. And therefore he shouldn't even fight it. And if he can't hold on to the knife that moment or even that day, okay, so he'll be able to hold the knife tomorrow or the next day. You understand the anxiety that this kid has about shchita being his channel for parnasa is so intense that it's actually physically causing him to have a bodily manifestations of the anxiety. The Rebbe says it's complete anxiety. The Rebbe didn't say to go treat his hand. The Rebbe said he should just relax and stop obsessing on it, stop perseverating on it. He should just tell himself, it's fine. It's nothing. It's nothing. Okay, I can't hold the knife today. Okay, I'll hold it tomorrow or hold it the next day. Whatever. No biggie. Gimel. Bechdei lahitziei mahamatzev the chashashes for tzimtzum, of a kashas tachlis, lavie lemerchov. To relieve him from his conditions of worries, anxiety, and searching for a career, and to bring him to freedom. Muchroch hadavar sheyeh livnoi sheyichye kvias belimud teiras hachsidis nishmosa deraisa ilona dechaye. Your son has to have a set time for learning chassidus, which is called the soul of the Torah and called the tree of life. And it has to be every day. V'tikvase chazaka shebeim yase kechol anal vetzich das oisstein von sich allein. If he'll do everything I told him, I really hope that everything's going to resolve itself on its own. And you're not going to need anything else. There will be no further action required. Okay. Regarding his doctor's visits, seems that the boy was seeing a doctor because of this hand problem. I'm going to tell you what I told him. I told him, in my opinion, that really he doesn't need this. It's not necessary. In other words, the Rebbe was really just sort of minimizing the whole issue. Oh, you want to go to the doctor? Go to the doctor. You don't need the doctor. Since he already got used to seeing the doctor, it's not natural for a person to just stop all of a sudden. It's very interesting, this insight that Rebbe was saying earlier, that when a person has a certain worldview that's deeply ingrained in his psyche, it's just not possible to talk him out of it in one conversation. And similarly, the Rebbe is saying here, that when a person has this habit and he's going to the doctor, I'm not going to tell him to drop it all at once. What I did is I downplayed it and I told him, yeah, you want to go to the doctor, you can go, yeah, but you don't really need it, but whatever. That's how you say it in English in 2022. Yeah, whatever, yeah, doctor, yeah, whatever. You should just sort of start spacing out the intervals between one doctor's visit and the next. Until you'll finally just not go anymore. Hashem should give you the merit to have much chassidus nachas from your children, from all of your children. May they live many good years, bivracha, with blessing. And that's letter number 23. Okay, we'll see you tomorrow night for another letter, 30 letters in 30 days.